to all of you. I promise you that I did not meet Srinivas before. I didn't put him up to all that. Called me a karma yogi and all that. I'm not too sure if I'm worth it, but thank you, Srinivas Garu, for those really, really kind words. A very good morning to the entire team of NHRD, Mr. Nathan, Vipul, Srinivas, to all the distinguished delegates who have come from, I'm told, about 25 different states and 50 different cities across the nation. Warm welcome to all of you, to this wonderful city of ours, Hyderabad, to this wonderful state of ours, Telangana. The topic, that has been given to me is decoding the economic future and how Hyderabad can act as a catalyst for a 5 trillion economy. Before I get into the subject per se, let me quickly point out a couple of things. Yesterday, the budget was presented by the Union Finance Minister, and over the last several years, several decades, we've been hearing about numbers from every finance minister, every prime minister, every chief minister, every government representative on various forums. We've been hearing about how India is a compelling business opportunity. We've been hearing about how the world is looking at India, etc., etc. Before I talk about numbers, let me quickly give you a little bit of perspective, from being in politics and public life for the last 17 years. I was also a part of the private sector for about 7.5, 8 years in the US and also for some time in India as well. The one thing I've realized, both in public life and also when I was in the corporate sector, is that the biggest challenge for a leader, irrespective of who it is and what they run, at what institution they head. It could be a government headed in a state by a chief minister. It could be a government headed in a country by a prime minister or a president. Or it could be a corporate entity headed by a chief executive officer. The biggest challenge for any leader across the world is not wealth management or capital management. It actually is people management. Because the best of the people, in fact, deliver the goods and basically make an enterprise or an institution or an entity successful. That's a fact. Now, the case in point, I'd like to narrate a quick story. We always measure our economies in terms of trillions. We hear terms such as GDP, the gross domestic product, the gross state domestic product. We also hear terms such as per capita, etc., etc. But in my humble opinion, and without having to, I hope I'm not offending anybody when I say this, I think sometimes these can be misleading. The numbers, especially when it comes to numbers, it can be misleading. Because if you think about it for a minute, by virtue of our size as a nation, we are a 1.4 billion nation. We are, in fact, as of last week, if I am correct, we have recently surpassed China, and we are the most populous nation in the world today. So by sheer virtue of the size of our people, the size of our country, the population, the economy looks big. It is about $3.4 trillion now. But if you look at the per capita, by GDP, by economy, we're the 5th largest in the world. But if you look at per capita, we're actually the 142nd country in the world by per capita. Our per capita is only 2,400 USD. So the real measure, if you ask me, how does one understand the trillions of dollars of economy that is being talked about? How does one balance GDP and wealth? Now, for those of you who are wondering, what is the difference between GDP and wealth? If you ask me, GDP is a reflection, gross state domestic product, the 5 trillion, the $10 trillion, etc., are a reflection of the economic activity of a nation. It could be in the previous year, or GDP forecast could be about economic activity that is likely to unfold in the next quarter, in the next couple of quarters, or next 1 year, etc., etc. But what is the wealth of a nation? The wealth of a nation is actually a collection as a combination of its assets, both natural resources, its human resources, and how they are likely to influence the economic activity over a longer term, how the depreciation of these assets, these resources, the depletion of these resources, and how the utilization of these resources is intricately linked to ensuring long-term sustainable growth in line with the developmental aspirations of that particular nation. So, let me not confuse you, without giving you examples. I'll give you two examples. Back in 1987, China and India, exactly 35 years ago, two countries with similar size of human resources, had the exact same size of GDP, 1987. But if you actually now move 35 years ahead and look at the current times and current date, China's economy is almost at $18 trillion, and we are languishing at $3.4 trillion. China's per capita is 13,000 US dollars. Our per capita is 2,400 US dollars. So what am I talking about here? What did China do that India didn't in the last 35 years? In my humble opinion, if I have to sum it up properly in one single line, I think China managed its aspirations, its developmental goals, and ensured that the natural resources and human resources were put to good effective use, and has competed with the West and the best in the world to ensure it reached where it is. But even China has a long way to go. If you look at the size of the economy versus the size of the people, huge difference. I'll give you one example of another Asian country which has done tremendously well purely because of the intellect of its people. Japan. All of you know the story of Japan, at least most of you, I would imagine, would know the story of Japan. It's a country with about 12.57 crore people, not even 1/10 of India. And it's a country whose geography, in fact, is so complicated that 75% of the country is uninhabitable. 75% of the country is mountainous. The topography is such that it's a very, very densely populated country across the coastal areas. And unfortunately, Japan is one of those countries which is surrounded by oceans. So it's had frequent tsunamis, cyclones, typhoons, earthquakes, very little natural resources, very little cultivable area. Only 11% of the land is cultivable, and very little area where humans can actually inhabit. And on top of all this, if you remember, in World War II, Japan is the only country on the planet which had been bombed. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I'm sure all of you have heard. It's the only country which was ever under nuclear attack in 1940s. Now what happened then? Today Japan is the third largest economy in the world. In fact, until 2010, it was the second largest economy in the world. That's when China actually surpassed it. So what's happening in the world, if you think about it for a minute? India, with 140 crore people, with 40 crores of cultivable area, abundant natural resources, amazing talent, and most importantly, with a median age of 28, and with 65% of India being less than the age of 35, only has a 3.4 trillion economy. But Japan, with 12.57 crore people, with a median age of 49, has a 4.3 trillion economy with a per capita of 39,000 US dollars. So what is happening in these two countries, if you think for a minute? The one thing I can tell you that Japan has done successfully, has invested in the sectors that matter, has invested in its people, has ensured that the focus of the government, the collective goal, the collective national ambition, the collective national aspiration as a nation was very well defined, was extremely well edged in the minds of every Japanese, and they went about it with a single-minded pursuit. In India, unfortunately, while we do have leaders, while we do have many smart leaders, unfortunately our focus is always on politics. We're not focused on economics. Our focus is on winning the next election. Our focus is not in ensuring that the next generation has a better life than ours. That's the unfortunate challenge in India. We're in perennial election mode, including me. I'm not trying to say that we are any different. That's the unfortunate reality of being the world's largest democracy, with elections happening throughout the year, and with every single politician, instead of being focused on economics, is always seized with more and more politics every single day. That's the problem with India right now. So what is it that I'm proposing? The question that I think we all need to ask ourselves is, should an economy, should a country's wealth be measured by numbers, by the 5 trillion numbers, by the 10 trillion or the 16 trillion numbers, or should it look at the most valuable asset that it possesses? In India's case, I think it's the think force that we have. India's think force, like I said, which is 65% with the median age of 35, 50% with the median age of 28. I think that's the biggest asset that India has. Unfortunately, not many countries have that. Like I said, Japan's median age is 49, China's median age is 39. I can go on. We're the youngest nation on the planet. But are we putting our human resources? Are we putting this human capital to good use? No. We have sociologically, psychologically as a nation. You know, I was at a couple of schools yesterday and day before, meeting and interacting with young minds, youngsters. I kept asking them. I kept probing. I said, are you happy with the infrastructure? They said, okay, we are reasonably happy. I said, do you want anything more? They said, we are fine. And I kept asking and I kept probing. I asked them one question. I said, what do you want to be once you graduate, once you become a graduate or a postgraduate? About 99% of them said, I want to actually be employed. I want to be seeking a job. When I asked them, why do you want to be a job seeker? Why can't you be a job creator? Not many of them actually had a straight answer. As a society, as a nation, I think collectively, we have ensured that this amazing, abundant talent, abundant human capital that we have converted it into a huge, huge pile of worker bees, and not as somebody who thinks of creating wealth, of somebody who can create jobs, of somebody who can create free market enterprises which will thrive and compete with the best in the world. Unfortunately, in the last 75 years of independence, name one single brand from India that has come out, which is truly having a global appeal. A real, original Indian brand that truly has a brand appeal across the world. If you ask me, look around. You will be holding an Apple phone. You will be holding a Sony phone or a Samsung phone or, one of those amazing brands. You must have come in a Toyota or a Honda or even a Suzuki, I don't know, BMW, Mercedes. All of these brands are alien. All of these brands are alien and have been created by small countries, a very small sized population. If you think for a minute, what is Taiwan famous for? Taiwan is famous for semiconductors. Taiwan is famous for electronics. What is Singapore famous for? A small country with about, I think, less than the size of Hyderabad. Half the population of Hyderabad is today almost $1 trillion economy. So what are we talking about here? Singapore can be $1 trillion economy, and a country like India is still dreaming and still talking about $5 trillion. It will happen. 5 trillion will happen. No matter if there is a government in Delhi or Hyderabad, it will happen. Even if there is no government, even if there is no prime minister, even if there is no chief minister, the 5 trillion dream will happen. It doesn't take a government to make that happen. Because it is the industry, it is the private sector, it is the people of this great nation that actually will make it happen. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, are our leaders, is the leadership of this great nation, in fact, giving us a vision of reaching that $25 trillion or $30 trillion or being the highest per capita in the world? It's not about the 5 trillion size. It's about the per capita, how the wealth is distributed among its citizens. On the one hand, India has some of the richest people in the world. The richest, if you look at the top 10 index, I think there are 2 or 3 Indians. I think one of them has slipped out of top 10 yesterday, but that's a different story. But on the other hand, we also are the nation with the maximum number of poor people on the planet. So unless the wealth is distributed equitably, unless, I'm not preaching socialism, I'm not preaching communism. All I'm saying is, when the Honorable Prime Minister himself says, a freebie culture, revdi culture, theek nahi hai. Let me remind all of you in this room. we are still a third world country with the maximum number of poor people on the planet. While 5 trillion, 10 trillion goals are laudable, ambitious, noteworthy, praiseworthy, the fact remains, unless a government in India, every government in India, takes care of its most vulnerable, there will come a day when civil strife will ensue. And all those who are sitting here in the comforts of this wonderful auditorium will not be able to have such meetings if there is civil strife. So it is the bounden responsibility, it is the fundamental responsibility of every single government in this great nation to ensure that while the economy grows, the wealth also gets distributed. While the economy grows, the most vulnerable is also taken care of, and ensure that development and welfare go hand in hand. Now in Telangana, we have done exactly that. In the last 8 years, just to give you numbers, our per capita in 2014 in Telangana was 1,24,000 rupees. As of June last year, it rose to 2,78,000 rupees. When the national average, national per capita is only 1,49,000 rupees, Telangana's per capita is 2,78,000 rupees. The GSDP of Telangana was 5 lakh crores in 2014. As of June last year, it rose to 11.55 lakh crores. If I have to sum it up in one line, because we are talking about the 5 trillion economy, if the rest of India performed as well as Telangana did, we would have already been a 4.6 trillion economy today. That's how well Telangana has grown over the last 8 years. We grew at 15% compounded annual growth rate. We are a state, in terms of population, we are only 2.5% of India, but we contribute 5% to the GDP of India. So we are literally a 50-kilo boxer fighting in a 100-kilo category. We are punching double our weight. That's what I meant when I said people management. That's what I meant when I said expectations management, alignment of expectation with those of the needs of the people is important. In Telangana, we focused on the 3I mantra: innovation, infrastructure, inclusive growth. We ensured that all these three I's went hand in hand to ensure a fourth I, that is India, also raised along with us. On innovation, when I say innovation, a lot of people think startups. I don't just mean startups. Innovation can come from within the government in terms of new policy making. In Telangana, because I know there are a lot of chief executives also in the room, let me point out, we've innovated with our policy making. The first piece of legislation that we have drafted in the new state of Telangana in 2014 October was the TS iPass. TS iPass literally stands for the Telangana State Industrial Project Approval Self-Certification System. What does it mean? I'll just give you 3 salient features of it. If you, as a chief executive, had to launch a new operation or a new factory in my state, you actually don't need to get a clearance from the government. You don't need an approval from the government. You don't need an approval from the local municipality. You don't need an approval from the local village panchayat. You can hit the ground running. If you have a piece of land that is already allocated to you, you can start the construction of your factory on day one by self-certifying yourselves that you will be in compliance with the law of the land. What we seek of you, though, because we need to also ensure regulatory compliance is met with, we seek that you submit all details, the nature of business, the investment, the employment potential, the taxes you would be paying, etc., the category of industry, etc., on the TS iPass portal. When we receive all that information on the portal, we promise all clearances by statute, backed by legislation, in a span of 15 days. If we don't deliver on the 15-day promise, on the 16th day, it's a deemed approval, it's an automatic approval. No state in India will tell you this. No other state in India will tell you this. On the 16th day also, this TS iPass legislation gives me a handle to penalize even my senior bureaucracy, senior bureaucrats, with a penalty of rupees 1,000 per day if they are held responsible for holding up the clearances. Again, no other Indian state has done this in the last 75 years. For those of you who are wondering, is this too good to be true, or does it actually work in reality? Or since this guy is a politician wearing a white shirt, is he just BSing his way through? Let me tell you, in the last 8.5 years, we've been able to raise more than $47 billion of investment, have given more than 21,920 plus clearances through the TSI Pass portal, have been able to create more than 2.1 million direct job potential, 21 lakh direct job potential in this state, and some amazing marquee names have come through this process in the last 8.5 years. Did you know that Amazon's world's largest campus is not in Seattle? It is actually in the city of Hyderabad and state of Telangana. Did you know that Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Uber, Micron, ServiceNow, Qualcomm, Novartis, all of their second largest campuses in the world, Medtronic's second largest campuses in the world, are in this city of Hyderabad, in Telangana. Did you know that we produce 1/3 of world vaccines from this brilliant city of ours, Hyderabad? We are the vaccine capital of the world, not India. We produce 40% of pharmaceuticals for India. We also produce 1/3 of vaccines for the world. So this growth story that I was just talking about, of how well Telangana has done, not just in industry. While industry has been growing, Telangana's environmental goals also have not been compromised on. 7.7% is the growth of green cover in Telangana in the last 7 years, highest in the country. So this is the kind of well-rounded development I was talking about. Industry not at the cost of environment. IT has been growing. Our IT exports were 57,000 crores in 2014. As of last year, they rose to 1,83,000 crore. IT has been growing, but so has agriculture. Our agriculture has grown at 119%. Our paddy production in 2014 was 68 lakh metric tons. In 2022, it rose to 3.5 crore metric tons. We are the only state in India to have completed an amazing drinking water project of providing a potable drinking water connection to each and every one of our 1 crore homes, even before the government of India woke up, under a project called as Mission Bhagirath. In 75 years, we were the first state in India who had accomplished that. While drinking water has been taken care of, let me also indulge you for a minute. Those of you who are trigger happy, I request you to pull out your phones for a minute. Please do. Please Google. Please Google. World's largest lift irrigation project. And please tell me the answer, one of you, after you Google. World's largest lift irrigation project. Kaleshwaram project in Telangana. We literally lift a river from 80 meters above sea level all the way to 618 meters above sea level. We talk about three gorges, we talk about Chinese execution, etc., etc. But the fact is, the wonderful engineering human capital that we have in the state of Telangana were able to accomplish, the youngest state of India was able to accomplish an engineering feat of commissioning the world's largest lift irrigation project in a flat 4 years of time span. Now that's a record in itself, and that's why I call my state the most successful startup state of India, not because we had capital, not because we had resources, but because we had amazing human capital, and but because our Honorable Chief Minister recognizes the grassroots problems, has ensured that these amazing human resources were deployed in a logical fashion, in a methodical fashion to achieve these goals. So once again, when I have to talk about Hyderabad and how it can catalyze 5 trillion economy, I'll only say one thing. If only the rest of India can work like Telangana, if only the rest of India can be led by a leader like KCR, then I think 5 trillion is a joke. We'll actually reach a 15 trillion economy in the soonest possible time. Thank you very much.